Howdy. Here to finish up my quick reviews for the Exorcist franchise, and now I'm kind of stuck with the prequel that became two prequel. Let me explain that because it's confusing but weirdly honest and true. So, a prequel to The Exorcist was greenlit, filmed, edited, test screened for executives, and they hated it over at, I believe it was Morgan Creek Productions. They've been doing movies for decades, even before this. And this was early 2000s, early mid 2000s. So they saw it, they hated it, and said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the script, give it to another director, and he's going to go shoot the exact same movie. And that's how we kind of ended up with Exorcist the Beginning. And Rennie Harlan stepped in to direct the redo, I guess is the best way to kind of describe it. He's directed movies for decades. I believe he did Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, Die Hard 2. I won't hold that against him. But stepped in to redirect, I guess, this movie. And the sets are the same. I've seen both films specifically to review. The sets are the same. A lot of the same actors have come over. And they're not entirely the same. It's not like lines of dialogue, exit stage left after you say this line. Those aren't the same. But the general idea of it is exactly the same. And the idea of it is Father Marin, after the war, has lost his faith and has come to Africa to help on an archaeological dig of a church in East Africa that dates back to somewhere between 500 AD and right around the time of Christ, which anybody who knows history kind of knows that that's not really possible. So here's our mystery. So this one begins with Marin already being destitute. He's done. He's not a priest anymore. He's just an archaeological guy. And he's hired to find an artifact in that they believe is in Africa, right around this church that is being dug up. He's being paid a lot of money, so he goes. Isn't particularly happy about it, but he goes. Ends up meeting a British Army colonel, might have been a major. Another priest who tells him, yeah, we found this church, dug it up, all that. Thousands of years old, don't know what's up there. So he goes and they start digging it up, and now everything is going screwy. Which is something I will give both of these prequels over the original. The original played it a lot softer with the weirdness. Like, it was only particularly around a house, but with these, it's a lot more around the dig site and the small town that they have. And they finally unearth enough for him to go in, and it's wrong. Everything about it is just off. If a church is usually built for people to congregate in, but this thing is built much more, I almost want to say, elaborately uncomfortable. Giant statues all looking down. It's odd. And they also end up finding a cross broken off and turned upside down, which also doesn't kind of line up. Like, who would do that? Why would they do that? All that. And then everything goes screwy. And that's kind of one of the things I really like about this, is there is a red herring for who's the demon possessed. Yeah, it starts off, you think it's this little kid, because he's kind of off, and he collapses after a hyena attack on his brother, and he's just kind of off, and he's in the hospital for 90% of the movie after that. So it's a really nice red herring, as everything around him is going off, short tempers for everybody, and no, come to find out it's this other person. And Marin's now trying to figure out what's going on. Because there's this whole history of what's been happening around here before he got here. Like the story of an entire army from hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, that came here and massacred each other. But somehow a priest walked out. And now the church has kind of dug up their own records of what was going on, the history of this church that doesn't exist, all that. And it's not too bad. It kind of keeps the pace going. And the story of the church is that something evil was here and they put the church up. That this might very well have been the place where Lucifer was cast out and hit. So, alright, that kind of works. Kind of iffy on the how it works into the Exorcist universe, but yeah, I've swallowed a lot worse things for these movies. So, as Marin's kind of figuring out what's going on, the British Army and the natives are kind of feeling off about each other. The natives don't like the church because they believe that it's evil. There's only evil in there. Whereas the British are like, this is ours. Don't come near it. We're going to protect it. This is our place. That it works as a natural conflict point, but because of all of the things that are happening, they help kind of give a little bit of a almost a B plot, I guess is the kind of way to put it. Like, all right, now what's going to happen? Because these tempers are flaring, things are already getting weird, and at the climax, it does end up with both sides pretty much massacring each other because of the demonic influence. And as Marin is kind of looking into what's going on, he finds out that the last guy who basically had his job went inside, went nuts, and, well, he's locked up, and I think he ends up dying. And as Marin's kind of piecing this all together, he's like, he doesn't believe any of these omens. Like, that was weird. It's really weird that all these hyenas ripped this one kid apart, but the one who was standing right next to him and didn't move, they just left alone. That's weird. And he makes a couple of friends, including a doctor and a translator that helps him out. And the doctor kind of hit it off. She's a Holocaust survivor. Unfortunately, it's one of the things that they do end up kind of having in common is a deep-seated hatred for everything about the war. And Marin's backstory in the war were kind of softly fed throughout the movie of what it was. He was used by the Germans to point out people who they then executed, which I don't hate. Kind of works. Like, as somebody devoted to this belief system to then pretty much be drug out into the middle of the street because of it, because you have this authority in the community and have that authority used to damage that community, that's a hard thing to swallow. So I'd really get that. And they're going on, figuring it out. Finally, Marin and the priest come to the realization, oh, it's a demon. This boy is possessed. We're going to go do it. So the priest takes the kid into the church. He's going to do the exorcism. Marin's run off. He's figuring everything out. And that's when he finds out that it's not the boy who's possessed, it's actually the doctor, because she was married to the guy who went into the church first, and she went with him, which is when she was possessed and he went nuts. And unfortunately, Marin doesn't get there in time. The priest is already dead. The doctor lady is already full-on possessed with makeup from the original Exorcist, which I do love. That was really good. And now everything kind of goes wonky for him. And by wonky, I mean the CGI. Oh my god, the CGI in this movie is bad. Which is kind of weird because mid-2000s, you're like, alright, it can't be that good. This wasn't a multi-million-dollar movie like Spider-Man 2 came out right around the same time. And plus, this was a complete reshoot, so obviously they're not going to put $50 million into it. But it's bad. The hyenas were all CGI. They looked bad. But, alright, they're in a scene. I can swallow it. But once Marin confronts the possessed woman, and she's full demon, she's jumping on walls, doing back bends, and it's terrible. It is pretty much almost enough to completely take you out of the movie. It's so bad. And Marin has to re-find his faith and exorcise this demon. And out of all five, I will very happily say this is probably the most action-packed climax, because he's getting tossed around, the demon's running off, trying to lie to him, appearing like, oh, she was possessed, now she's clean, you're good, only to jump him. And Marin, it just keeps coming. He's this, I almost want to say holy knight, like a paladin, because he just keeps coming. He gets thrown down, he gets back up, and never stops. And I have really enjoyed that, because the climaxes were mildly entertaining, really interesting because we haven't seen this before, confusing because the entire movie went off the rails about a third of the way in, or just kind of cobbled together because we're introduced to a character an hour ago and we've had 3 scenes with him, now he's dead. Yeah. So coming into this, we followed this journey. Marin has rediscovered his faith. He's got this. He's going to do it. And he manages to exorcise the demon. But because the demon was possessing her, all of the injuries she sustained don't come up, and she ends up dying. And Marin escapes with the kid. He's a priest again, and he's good. And here's our mild segue into where we'll find him at the beginning of the original Exorcist. Now I kind of have to backtrack a little bit to the item he was looking for to begin with. And that item was the little statue head that Marin dug up in the opening of the original Exorcist. He does find it. He finds it when he realizes that the doctor was the one possessed, because he finds it embedded in her wall. And he pulls it out and he takes off into a sandstorm as the local tribe and the army are fighting, and then he loses it in the sand. The MacGuffin he was sent to find, he has for all of 3 minutes and is gone. Like, okay. Having said that, I do like that it is that little head, because now it really ties into the opening of The Exorcist. And now, oh, I get it now. Why, when he dug it up, it was an oh shit moment. So, I do like that. That was very good. But everything up to it, because it's name checked at the beginning. You're looking for this. And then he finds it. And it's gone. It's the most MacGuffin I've ever seen. It exists solely to get him here. Then it doesn't matter anymore. And then it matters. And then it's gone. It's It doesn't really work for me. The story, however, completely works for me. All of these movies have always dealt with the non-believer or a person in a crisis of faith rediscovering it in the face of evil and beating the evil. That works. And in this one, it does kind of work out a lot best, because Marin is probably the most anti-faith we've seen in any of these. He's done. He has washed his hands of it. The world is chaos. No one is watching out for you. And then he has to rediscover it, juxtaposed to this young priest who does completely believe, has devoted his life to it. The one who's seen the evils of the world, and the one who's still new to it. So that really helps kind of build the framework from I don't care to warrior of God. Unfortunately, the young priest does end up dead, which I kind of don't like that. But that's just kind of the way a lot of these have worked out. So, alright, you're sticking to a specific trope. I'll deal with it. The climax I liked, just because there was something. They were moving. It wasn't just in a single solitary room. They were moving around the caverns under the church. In the church. I dig it a lot. I'm very happy they did it. Because even the original prequel, its climax was pretty much a one-roomer. So, spoiler alert for that one. But this one actually nailed together pretty good. I'd heard bad things about it. That this one wasn't that good, but the original was a little better. I'll get into that next time. But I do think that this one is actually pretty good. I don't think it's as good as the original or third one, but it's still better than the second one. So, where do I put Exorcist the Beginning? I got to give it a 3 out of 5. It works out. I wasn't too disinterested in a lot of the scenes. I don't think I'd go out and see it at a midnight screening, but I do think it's something. If you enjoyed the original, you can throw it in and watch it and have a decent amount of time and not hating it anyway. So, thanks for watching and take it easy.